Hey, most excellent rock buds. Rock Papa here. Last time we talked about how land crust was made. And we mentioned that land crust is created by the process of subduction. And as you know, subduction creates and enlarges continents. We found out last time what land crust was made of. When land crust initially forms, as an island arc, say, or even a continental arc via subduction, it is composed mostly of rocks that are intermediate in composition. It means they have medium amounts of quartz, they have lots of sodium-rich feldspar, lots of biotite, and a good bit of hornblende too. These are intermediate minerals, if you will. So what kind of rocks is land crust made of? What kind of rocks are these intermediate rocks? You have a lot of diorite magma, now cooled into rock, of course. You have a lot of andesite lava, now cooled into rock. You have a lot of granite formed, and its eruptive equivalent, dacite, usually. And you get some Gabbro and some basalt magma now cooled into basalt. But mostly you have these intermediate rocks. And of course you have the very felsic, very silicon and potassium feldspar rich, tough material that gets blown out of the volcano, settles down on the usually on the underwater flanks of the volcano, gets flushed through with this very hot water that's laden with minerals from the or elements from the volcanic vents, black smokers, and these hot water vents flush all kinds of stuff out and all kinds of stuff into these sediments, like iron, sulfur, that forms a pyrite staining, which is red. It also turns the potassium feldspar and the muscovite into cerussite. Now let's have a look at what happens when you have continental collision between two bodies of land crust. Okay, here we are back at Papa's Little Rock World, and we're going to talk about how land crust and ocean crust get metamorphosed during continental collisions. Let's say we have an island arc here composed of diorite, andesite, granite, and some quartz muscovite pyrite schist. And we've got another, let's say this is another island arc, and it's made of the same stuff, but I don't have enough to make it. In between them is a bunch of ocean crust. You've got peridotite in the upper mantle. You've got gabbro, you've got basalt, and you've got mud and sand. Now, continental collision is about to occur. So this island arc or continent or whatever it is starts pushing toward the other one. And the first thing that happens is all this ocean crust, a lot of this ocean crust gets plowed out and its sediments get plowed up and out of the ocean, and they're going to be thrust on top of this land crust. So let's pretend that's happening, and we'll use this piece of basalt to represent ocean crust. The ocean crust is being pushed up onto the land here, this land crust, and this land crust is being pushed like this, plus or minus. So this gets pushed up, and this guy right here, as he rides up on this piece of land crust, he pushes everything down and puts a lot of heat and pressure into the geologic oven, you might say. So what happens the diorite and the andesite get metamorphosed. The granite gets metamorphosed. The basalt gets metamorphosed. This quartz, muscovite, pyrite, sericite schist, the quartz in this schist gets pushed into bands, further metamorphosed, but it doesn't change terribly much. So the question is, what do these rocks, these igneous rocks, turn into when metamorphism occurs? Okay, so andesite and diorite get metamorphosed into, most likely, biotite gneiss, an intermediate metamorphic rock. And biotite gneiss is composed of a little quartz, a lot of biotite, and a lot of sodium-rich feldspar. That's the white spots there. And here's a bunch of iron. There's a lot of iron in there too. So what happens to the granite? Well, the granite gets metamorphosed into, you guessed it, granite gneiss. You can tell granite gneiss has the same minerals as granite. Lots and lots of quartz, lots of potassium-rich feldspar, a good bit of sodium-rich feldspar, some biotite, and perhaps some muscovite. But the minerals are pushed into these bands by the process of metamorphism. That's how you can tell granite gneiss from granite. You've got this metamorphic banding. Okay, so the gabbro and the basalt are metamorphosed into a metamorphic rock called amphibolite. And here's two bits of amphibolite. Amphibolite often forms these kind of rounded structures because as it weathers, it pops off onion-like pieces and eventually turns into a kind of a round thing, not always. A lot of this peridotite, along with its serpentinite, gets shoved up on land too, along with the ocean crust. And when that happens, the peridotite begins to turn into serpentinite. That's because it goes from very hot temperatures and high pressures up to the surface, where the temperature and the pressure are both far less than down below, so it starts undergoing the serpentinization process. And this process can take thousands of years, maybe millions of years for all I know. But eventually, this peridotite will turn into a lot of this serpentinite. So let's look at the before and after. Before, you have an arc, island arc, or a continental arc that's made mostly of diorite and andesite, but you've also got a little bit of gabbro, basalt, and also granite. After continental collision, all these guys get metamorphosed into the diorite and andesite get metamorphosed into biotite gneiss, an intermediate rock. The gabbro and basalt get metamorphosed into amphibolite, which is a mafic rock. Peridotite of the upper mantle gets pushed up on land along with ocean crust, and it begins to undergo the serpentinization process, where it turns into serpentinite, which is a soft greenish rock that is the state rock of California. The granite gets metamorphosed into granite gneiss, and the quartz, muscovite, pyrite, sericite schist, it kind of stays the same. So along the edges of continents, like along the east coast here and along the west coast of North America, the land crust is composed mostly of these interesting, mostly intermediate rocks, but also some mafic and some felsic rocks. And they are mostly metamorphic rocks. Sorry about that. Okay, so guys, we've talked about the basics that happen when continents collide, but there's a little more, and I want to fill in those details now. God help us both. So anyway, here we go. Okay, here's a profile of the sediments that are on top of ocean crust that get smushed in between the two continents and change. And so let's look at them. This is limestone, and it represents limey mud that is on the bottom of the ocean. This is shale, which represents mud. And this is sandstone, which represents sand. As they get pushed onto the land, when continents collide, they are metamorphosed also. The limestone gets metamorphosed into, you already know it, marble. The mud, which turns into shale, eventually gets metamorphosed into slate. Okay, this sandstone represents sand, and during the volcanic phase of the island arc or continental arc, oftentimes this sand will get flushed through with lots of iron, and it's the same hydrothermal process that turns the mud into and other sand into quartz, muscovite, sericite, pyrite, schist. So you end up, after metamorphism occurs, you end up with this, I'm going to call it iron-rich quartzite. Some people call it hematite quartzite. And it's very iron-rich, and it's that same flushing process that the black smokers do. Now, I didn't talk much about this felsic tuff here. A lot of the felsic tuff blows out and settles down on the underwater flanks of the volcano, and that's what eventually becomes this interesting, beautiful quartz, muscovite, pyrite, sericite schist. So here we have it. The before rocks and their metamorphic equivalents. And that's enough for one session for us both, I think. Okay, guys, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was fairly straightforward, and Papa's little rock world is helping instead of hurting. And I wanted to let you guys know that I'm working on an app that will help you guys to identify rocks. I'm having to do Swift programming. That's a programming language, Swift. So it's hard. There's a big learning curve to learning this language, and if it were not for my AI assistance, I couldn't do it. But it's going to take a while, and when it's done, I'll let you guys know about it first. So hopefully there'll be a way where you guys can download it and experiment with it and give me some feedback. But that's going to be later on this year. For now, happy rock hunting to you guys. This is your rock Papa. Papa out.